What's up, everybody? Coach Rob here, back with another prep update. It is 12 weeks out within this week, and this Saturday it will be 11 weeks out. But I did promise updates weekly all the way into the show, and I promise you that these updates will get better, more exciting, and far more compelling the deeper I go. And I'm working towards that. And there's even going to be some training videos included, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know I promised that already, but they are coming, and we're working out the details with that. At 12 weeks out, this is a pinnacle moment in contest prep. 12 weeks, pretty much for nearly everyone who's competing or ever will compete. 12 weeks is when it's go time in terms of working your way into getting absolutely freaking peeled, getting as shredded as you can possibly be. Depending on where somebody is sitting, then 8 weeks might be the case, but I prefer 12 weeks because I want to make sure that everything's dialed in and we're doing everything correctly, working all the way into the show. And I would personally, and I would do this with my clients as well, I'd much rather be stage ready 2 to 3 weeks out and then hold that position, and you can manipulate that with food at that point. Obviously, you're going to continue to train to maximize the preservation of whatever lean muscle mass that you've acquired. And even for some, especially like someone myself who has been literally off for 4 years, but at one time had a considerable amount of muscle and has competed, you could even accomplish what some call, or what many call, or I guess what everyone calls, growing into the show, meaning you still have a small opportunity to reacquire a small amount of muscle mass or recomp muscle that you've had previously, even in a deficit. Remember, the rules in bodybuilding don't apply as they apply to the general public. It's the Wild West, and it's different. And obviously, as coaches and even competitors have proved that for literally 6 decades. So at 12 weeks out, I started my cut. Now, in the last video update, I walked you through what my carb cycling protocol was. And as a reminder, I do carb cycling because, this is about optimizing my physique to stand on stage in what is now a little under 12 weeks. And I am not ideologically driven about my diet. I'm results driven. And I've chosen a course of action that I believe, and what nearly everyone doing what I do believes and knows, that the optimization of carbohydrate in a structured manner at the right amount, at the right times, on the right days, depending on output and training, is going to be the best approach to maximize the best physique that you can bring on stage. Just like, a good example is any competitor that is competing nationally in the NPC and has a sincere goal to be the best that they can possibly be within that division, they're always going to utilize a carbohydrate carb up coming into the show after a depletion. But carb cycling is a version of that you use all the way through prep, manipulating it slightly, making adjustments and alterations to it as you come into the show to, once again, obviously maximize as much muscle as humanly possible and get as lean as humanly possible. And the carb cycling works extremely well. And there's not a top amateur or top pro, especially in the NPC and the IFBB, that does not do this. So this is why I'm doing it. And the results so far have been very, very good. And I'm very pleased with it. So I gave you the carb cycling macros, and in fact, total macros for the most part in the last video, and I've had to make an adjustment now because it is 12 weeks out. The entire goal of this at this point is to get as shredded as possible. For me, as a 50-plus competitor, an old guy, I understand that it's not necessarily about mass. There's only so much you can do with that, especially as my age. So the goal is just to recomp as much for me because of the layoff, and then, hang on to as much of that as humanly possible. But the real goal at this point, and you have to stay driven and focused to the goal, is conditioning, and conditioning. So the way I look at this now, literally on an hourly basis, definitely a daily basis, for the next 11 and a half weeks or whatever it is is my focus, and I have to keep reminding myself of this, it's about conditioning and shape. Bringing the best conditioning, still holding on to a nice shape that it appeals to the judges to present the best physique that I can on the morning of the show, which will be October the 18th at roughly 10 a.m. So right now, no matter how flat I look, no matter how small I think I look in clothes, I have to keep my eyes on the prize and understand that it's all about conditioning right now and getting as fat-free as I possibly can. And what is left at the end of that, it is what it is, and that's what we're going with. So I've been fairly pleased, though, up to this point. So, and before I even get to my adjustment in macros and my adjustments in my carb cycling, I did shoot a very fast video today, which I'll put up. And, it's not impressive, especially to me. Bodybuilders, when they look in the mirror 647 times a day, it's not vanity driven. It's not to look at how impressive you are. Believe me when I tell you, all of us at every level look in that mirror to only see our flaws and weaknesses, what body parts we need to hopefully bring up or try to improve, where we're still freaking fat, where we look like absolute dog shit. And the mind starts to really play tricks on you at this point, and you have to stay driven and focused. That's why I have, a good friend and NIFBB pro who's part of my team that you'll be introduced to shortly, because we're going to launch our own sort of sub show on this channel. Details coming, but I've got somebody in my corner that can give me an objective opinion each week to say you're on point. Stay the course, trust your plan, keep doing what you're doing, or say, dude, this looks like total dog shit. You look like a freaking water buffalo. If it were me, I'd do this. And then we put our heads together and make those calculations as we go. So that's where I'm at right now. So you're seeing this impromptu little video that I threw up, and better update videos and photographs will be coming each week, especially as I get in better shape than I am now, to keep kind of showing you the progress and the micro adjustments that are made, not only in my plan, but in my physique as we go. And hopefully, when we get to about 4 weeks out or 6 weeks out, I won't be in absolute freaking panic mode having to chase the reduction of fat. Hopefully it's, if anything, concerned that we might be peaking a little too soon, which is a great problem to have. So once again, as I alluded to, if we're 2 to 3 weeks out and we feel like I'm at a level of conditioning that I need to be, and I'm pleased with that, then at that point, you could slightly alter the food. You could raise it a little bit, try to hold that conditioning to the best of your ability. And on a daily basis, if you see any change in that conditioning, any spillover or blurriness, then you would then readjust, pull back a little bit. And then it's this little back and forth manipulation all the way up towards peak week. And then on peak week, typically we'll do a final glycogen depletion to really peel off anything that might be left, to make sure that we are 100% fat free, or at least as deep as we can possibly be. And then prepare for the final carb up, which for me will probably happen on about Thursday. We'll start to fill up the muscles with that glycogen in a very strategic and calculated manner. Continue to do that on Friday. I'll monitor how I look after each meal. And then if all goes well, and after all the peak week voodoo is properly applied, then hopefully I can wake up on Saturday morning before the show, having to do very, very little in terms of adjustments to make sure that I'm ready to walk on stage and present the best physique that I have. So that's the goal, and that's how this works. So, bodybuilding, unlike any other sport, is one of never taking your foot off the gas. And that literally occurs for definitely 16 weeks, if not even up to 8 months, where everything that you do is calculated. Every workout, every set, every repetition, every meal, every gram of food you consume or don't consume, how much cardio, when to bring it in, when to pull it back, how much do we do, not peaking too soon, not to look stringy, not to be over dieted. These are all concerns that need to be thought through literally, hourly, every single day, all the way in. And now for me, for the next roughly 11 weeks. So that's where we're at. So I have notes My adjustments on my carb cycling are as follows. Now, with carb cycling, just as a reminder, if you missed the last video, which that video was a little boring. It was kind of like setting the table for what's coming up, and these videos will get a little bit more exciting each week as we go. But the adjustments that I made now, there is what we call a moderate carb day. This is going to be on all of my training days, with the exception of leg day. Leg day is definitely the hardest workout that I do. It involves the most amount of muscularity on my body, and it's the most physically taxing, and it's the most intense. There's just a lot more output on that day. So that would be my high day, or what some call a super compensation day. Actually, the famous bodybuilding guru coach AJ Sims, I believe, coined that phrase of super saturation, meaning we want to find a level of carbohydrate that we can really super saturate the muscles with. But now that I'm deeper in a cut, we definitely don't want it to be so much that carbohydrate starts to spill over. And I've taken a very conservative approach in that regard. And I had my first high day yesterday, and the experiment worked well. In my opinion, and I don't mean to be bold here, because the whole damn thing could shit the bed in 11 weeks, hopefully not. But yesterday evening, for the first time, late in the day, right before I went to bed, I had a fuller, harder, denser look to me. And in my opinion, it's the first time that I a little bit, if you squinted, looked like a bodybuilding competitor. So I was fairly pleased with the results of that. So I'm going to stick with that right now for my high day. Now, for me, weekends are my off days. I also take Wednesday off. But Wednesday for me now is working some accessory things, like I work abs, I work lower back, and sometimes I might sprinkle in a little bit of traps, things like that to work on those. But it's not a super high intensity workout. It's only about 30 minutes long. So I keep Wednesday as a moderate day. And then on Saturday and Sunday on my days off, those are my low days. So on my moderate days, which are, roughly, my upper body days for the most part, I'm taking in roughly 285 grams of protein. And if I even get up in the 300 range, that's fine. Protein really has no desire whatsoever to convert as body fat, especially in the presence of carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are protein sparing. They help you protect the lean mass that you have, and you're not going to trigger gluconeogenesis, which can be, protein wasting, and you're converting protein and amino acids into glycogen, which is actually something we don't want to do in a bodybuilding contest prep. We want to preserve that and keep it for it to go to work. And there's not a huge concern about taking in too much protein to a point, because we know that it's a very expensive physiological process to convert protein into body fat. It's just not going to happen, especially when you're training at this level. So on my moderate days, I'm taking in 285. I could even max out as much as 300 grams of protein. That's all coming from lean protein sources right now. That's boneless, skinless chicken breast. That's very, very lean ground beef, like very lean flank steak, something like that. Definitely whitefish, like cod, is definitely something that I'll be taking in a lot from here on through to the end of the prep. Egg whites with a combination of yolks, like I might take in a cup of egg whites and a couple of whole eggs, because you do need a little bit of fat, but you don't need that much fat when you're bringing in the carb cycling, just enough to keep hormonal balance in check. And for me, on off days, the fat's going to be a little bit higher because the carbs are much lower. And on moderate days, the fat's going to be titrated down a little bit. And on high days, I'm going to push that fat as close to zero as possible on that day only. Because you want your body solely soaking up glycogen into the muscles, and you don't want any fat swimming around in the presence of that high carbohydrate day that could then potentially also easily store as body fat. So we don't want that in there. So on my moderate days, my carbohydrate intake is between 150 and 175 grams. I'm trying to stay conservative with it right now to sort of really get a gauge of where I'm at. So I'm keeping that closer to the 150 gram mark. And fat on those days is about 25 grams. On my high day, I can push that and super saturate the muscles with glycogen. I'm not going to spill that over because, a 213-pound bodybuilder or a 210-pound bodybuilder, which this morning I was 210 pounds. I was 209 pounds. And then after my super saturation day, my high carb day, I was 210. All of that was water because you're going to pull in a little bit of extra water with that extra glycogen. It's just water weight. It's nothing that we have to worry about right now. So I'm not concerned about that. So on my high day, my carbohydrates are between 275 and 300 grams. Yesterday, I hit 300 grams right on the damn nose. And it was probably the best look that I've had, especially at the end of the day. You always look super lean and super dry in the mornings, coming off of sleeping fast. And then as you eat, you fill out a little bit. So you see that super lean physique early in the morning, but it's very flat. And then later in the day, if you've done everything right, you're fuller, you have a nice roundness and a pop to your muscles, but you haven't done enough to really blur the lines and spill that over, if that makes sense. So on high days, protein stays the same, carbs are between 275 and 300, and fat is still fairly low at about 25 to 30 grams. On my low day, we really reduced the carbohydrate. Now we're down to between 50 and 75 grams of carbs. This weekend, I'm going to play with the 50-gram amount, see how that works. I don't want it to accelerate fat loss too much. So I'm going to experiment with the 50, and if my low days need to be closer to 75, I'll make that determination as we move along. There will be a point where there's probably going to be, in the late weeks of prep as we get closer to the show, it's probably inevitable that some of my low days will be as close to zero on carbohydrates as possible, almost like a protein-sparing modified fast. But for right now, 50 to 75 is probably going to be the sweet spot for me. I'm going to experiment with the 50 right now and see how that does. I'll bring fat a little higher on those days, probably into the neighborhood of like 60, 65 grams. And the only exogenous fats I'll be taking in might be some extra virgin olive oil. It might be, like post-workout right now, I have rice cakes with a tablespoon of organic almond butter for the little bit of fat. And that's how I'm going to approach my carb cycling right now. And then at 12 weeks, now almost 11 weeks, I'm going to ride that for a few weeks, see how that does, see how I progress. And you'll see it too as we do these videos every week. And then definitely at 8 weeks, that's when things get crazy. That's when the foot gets, that's when you put your foot all the way to the floor. You pump the gas as hard as you can. And then it doesn't matter really how extreme it gets at that point. We'll make those adjustments. And then definitely at that 4 to 6 week out, that's when you do whatever you got to do in order to strip off any more body fat that you have. Because again, the goal is to try to be as fat-free as humanly possible. The goal is 4%. It's hard to get to 4%. Most bodybuilders, especially at the level that I'm doing it at my age, 6 to 7% is probably more realistic and reasonable. But I feel like I've been given a second chance at this. And I was explaining this to some clients this morning. I don't mind any suffering that I have to go through right now. In fact, I'm taking it with joy because in my mind, it's nothing but gratitude because I have an opportunity to do this again. There was a point where I thought I would never do this again. And now that I am doing this again, I'm absolutely thrilled that I get this opportunity and I don't want to fuck it up. So it's going to be whatever it takes. But in past competitions, 4 to 6 weeks out, I was freaking dying. I was suffering. I hated my life. There's something different about my mindset this time to where I'm like, bring it on. I don't care how much suffering I have to go through to get to that super peeled physique because, again, I'm so full of gratitude that I have this opportunity again to continue to do this, hopefully a couple more times before I have to hang it up for good. So I have no reservations whatsoever about going as deep as I got to go. And I say, let's bring it. And I also, and this is important to state, I haven't done carb cycling like this in previous competitions. And I think even though I did well in past competitions with the exclusion of nationals, I didn't do as much carbohydrate. I didn't do any real carb cycling. And I think even when I got to a very lean point on stage, I think I still looked a little flat. I still think I looked a little smooth in some areas, especially in my legs. And now seeing some of the changes this far out, I'm very confident that this approach is going to take me to a level of conditioning that I've always wanted, while still retaining that muscle fullness that everyone desires on stage to present the freakiest damn physique that you can present on stage. So that is what I'm going to do. And, you know, in the past, I wasn't always confident. I'm a little more confident right now in terms of achieving conditioning. My biggest concern right now is, do I still have enough muscle to present that balanced look of, hey, he's got enough muscle and it's so well conditioned and well presented that, you know, the judges won't be able to, you know, there'll be no doubt in their mind that this is the best package that we see in front of us in the 50 plus. We're at the bland, boring, and repetitive part. And just to give you an example of how bland, boring, and repetitive this is, I'm eating 6 meals a day, almost exclusively from 1, maybe 2 whey isolate shakes a day. And that's generally first thing in the morning. And then I'll have whey immediately after my workout because it absorbs so quickly. And then other meals are all chicken breast and jasmine rice, egg whites, whole eggs, and cream of rice. It could be cod fillets and rice. It could be 97% ground beef with more jasmine rice. Occasionally in my earlier carb meals, I might have a little bit of organic oats to bring in a little bit of fiber to keep my gut moving along because of the volume of food, you know, broken up so far throughout the day. I will continue to eat 6 meals a day because it helps preserve muscle protein synthesis, which is critical for making sure that I keep all the muscle that I have as much as humanly possible. And that, combined with the higher protein and the hard training, convinces the body that, hey, based on what this guy is doing, we'd better hold on to as much muscle as we can, because through his actions, we see clearly that we need as much of this shit as possible. So that's that. And then, you know, in addition to being bland and boring, the only things outside of the foods that I just mentioned, I might have a couple dabs of hot sauce on some of my food. I might have a little bit of my now famous Southwest hot mustard on top of things, because that's fairly benign. Right now, just to not, you know, to keep things a little interesting, I'll occasionally have like a Sprite Zero just to break the monotony of all the water. I'll still have a couple LMNT electrolyte drinks a day, which is fine. I've backed off on the salt just a little bit, which is also working just fine for me. And there'll get to be a point where 4 to 6 weeks out, there'll be no more condiments. There'll be no more Sprite Zeros. There'll be nothing like that added in. Right now, I put literally a dot of heavy cream in my coffee. That will be gone. So now it'll be the most repetitive, bland, boring eating that you could possibly imagine. But again, for me, I count it as an absolute blessing, because going through that little bit of monotony, I have the opportunity to do something again that I absolutely love so much. So here we are at 12 weeks out. That's what's going on. There will be an 11-week out video next week. I'm going to try to get a little bit better in terms of progress pictures and video. I'm going to try to get a few training videos in so you see kind of what me and my workout partner are doing on the floor. Actually, my workout partner's on a cruise in Alaska next week, so it'll just be me. So maybe I need to whip out the handy dandy tripod and shoot a few videos of things I'm doing. And there'll be another video next week at 11 weeks. And hopefully, because it changes week to week, I'll be a little bit more dialed in. Then you tell me what you think, and I'm going to be as transparent with you as humanly possible. So lots more coming. Stay tuned. Hit the notification bell. Click a subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And I'll see you next week. Out.